Any discussion, any changes, any edits? Let's see. We had everyone here. It was the first time in a while. So if there are no edits or changes that we need to make to the minutes from October the 15th, then I would call for a vote all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Item number 6 is a public comment period, privilege of the floor. I see one individual from the public, but I think she may be here for one of the other items on the agenda. So we can, unless there's something else, Shannon, that you wanted to. Okay. Then we'll move along to item number 7, which is the scheduled public hearing for proposed local law number 3 of 2019, which is the enactment of the New York State Real Property Tax Law, Section 467J. I would entertain a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. We are in the formal public hearing for proposed local law number 3 of 2019. If anyone from the public would like to comment, now is the time. If you would like to, please.
Sure. I'm supposed to introduce myself, right?
Just your name for the record, please.
Shannon McCarrick. And I'm representing Habitat for Humanity tonight. We're in support of the local law. This is a big help to our home buyers when it comes to affordability and long-term affordability. It also helps us preserve the properties that we obtain and build on and make sure that they're going to stay as affordable housing for years to come, years beyond just the first home that we build, the first home buyers that we put in that home. So our land trust, for example, is a 99-year renewable lease. So we know that what we're doing when we build a house is going to go long beyond our lifetime on the board and beyond that first home buyer to keep that property.
Anything else? Any comments in?
I like affordable housing.
Okay.
I didn't read through them all, but it's fine. Good plans for them.
Sure. Is that car pull in? Is that a police car? Police car. Okay. Well, if there's nothing to add, then I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing on proposed local law number 3 of 2019.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I will state just for the record, we did receive today via email 4 letters of support for enacting this law. I have not seen, if anyone else has, please let me know. I have not seen or received any letters opposing the adoption of this law. So if there isn't any discussion, then I would entertain a motion to adopt proposed local law number 3 of 2019.
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second. Any additional discussion?
I would just add, I'm sort of disappointed by the lack of public comment. I mean, I know it's dry, but it felt important. I was expecting people to be here. I was looking forward to the discussion. I guess that's all. I mean, we talked about it, I think, at our last meeting, and we talked about it before when this came up initially. Sort of a different context, obviously, but I'll leave it there.
Any additional comments or discussion?
We're doing it.
Then I would ask the clerk to call for a roll call vote in to call for a roll call vote up or down on the passage of proposed local law number 3 of 2019?
Hannon,
Yes.
Carver.
Aye.
Mayor Hart,
Aye.
Barker.
Aye.
And trustee Watkins is excused, so it passes. Thank you for bringing it to us back in August.
Yeah.
I wish it was still August.
It's definitely not August.
No. Moving on to item number 8 on the agenda is our second public hearing of the evening. Proposed local law number 4 of 2019, which is changes and amendments to the motor vehicle and traffic law and its provisions. There's a copy in the Dropbox, and I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing on proposed local law 4 of 2019.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are in our public hearing. I will state, just for the record and for anyone watching at home, as soon as I pull it up, the two changes, as has been discussed, the two changes in this local law, it amends our current village vehicle and traffic law to do two things. One, to replace, or actually place legally for the first time, a stop sign at the intersection of Cemetery Road and Falls Road. This would be southbound coming up Cemetery towards Main Street, in coordination, although it's not stated in the law, but this will be done in coordination with the Town of Ulysses Highway Department, who will place a stop sign at the eastern side of Falls Road in the intersection, so that intersection can now be a 4-way stop. The other change we're making is there is currently in the law a loading zone in front of the village office. It's actually a few feet further down towards Elm Street in front of the village office that is not marked. The sign was removed when the Main Street project was done 12 years ago, but the law was never amended. So there's technically a loading zone there. We will be moving that loading zone across the street in front of Hazelnut Kitchen and the liquor store. And there will be 2 loading zone spots there for 15-minute parking only. That 15-minute parking will be enforced 7 days a week. The business owners on that section of Main Street have expressed support for that, so that there's more ability for people to park, pick up to-go food, or whatever the case might be, and have parking available to do that. It will also free up space for delivery trucks, which have historically not had a designated place to unload their deliveries and either are forced to double park or turn the corner onto Elm Street and potentially block that intersection. So those are the two, and the loading zone that exists in front of Garrett's will be moved down the street 75 feet, 100 feet towards where Word of Mouth Catering, where that building is. So we will have a loading zone and 15-minute parking in 2 different sections of Main Street. Everything else within the vehicle and traffic law will remain the same. So we are in public hearing for these changes. If there is any comment from the 2 members of the public who are present.
I'll say something. I have known different people that live in different parts of that road, Sunset Road. I take my car down the bikes to be serviced and quite frequently. And it's again, it's people coming from different directions there. It's very hard to see, and it's hard to know if somebody else has to start or something.
Thank you. Any other public comment on proposed local law number 4?
And we did also discuss this helps free up visibility, probably that driveway
Right, the little Venice.
Yeah, that
sort
goes
of
down behind the
that building,
apartments.
right, where the delivery driver.
Yeah,
Yeah, hopefully.
if it's not occupied.
Yeah, that's a tough driveway in any event, but certainly when it's not occupied, it'll help some. Probably not so much when there's a delivery truck parked there.
No, but
It's better than delivering a truck in the middle of the road.
It's-
the evening restaurant rush, cars will be in and out of there versus camped there all night. Could help. That's about all I got on that. That's just-
So if there's no more public input, then I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing on proposed local law number 4 of 2019.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I would entertain a motion then to adopt proposed local law number 4 of 2019.
Go ahead, Ben.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any additional discussion or comments from the board?
Thanks for working on that.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you very much.
Intimately familiar with this law now.
May you sleep better at night.
Then I will call for a roll call vote on the adoption of proposed local law number 4 of 2019.
Hannon,
Aye.
Carver.
Aye.
Earhart,
Aye.
and Garfield.
Aye.
Trustee Watkins is excused and local law number 4 of 2019 is adopted. Moving along to item number 9 on our agenda. Thanks, Shane. Reports from representatives. We did receive via email. Obviously, of course, tonight is the town board meeting night. So Nancy's across the street, and she did send all of us a report that she was going to share. And Anne, do you have anything you'd like to show us?
Sure.
Please proceed.
So, first thing is, you might have gotten an email, I'm not sure how long ago, they sent it, a month or so ago, our planning department, and they were asking for opinions on what you think we could use as far as services from our planning department. So they did get some responses, not a ton, from the various municipalities. So their proposals right now, as far as according to what feedback they got, was to help with municipality. The questions were, I don't know if I said that part, it was from the planning department to see what kind of assistance you guys might be needing on a regular basis. Because some of us legislators have been saying, we're hearing that, that you could use some help. So you can, the current proposal is to have a planning assistant support, a project specific support. So for instance, you're just needing various things, doesn't have to be on the project. You can be able to get, certain things or up to a certain amount. And right now we're saying approximately $2,500 worth of time. And if it was for a certain project, it would be up to $5,400 worth of time. And one thing that wasn't mentioned, but I know it can really make a difference of like who you work with. And so I know you guys attend keep you doing TCOT on a regular basis, right?
Not anymore, no.
No?
I handed that over.
And we're gonna split the duties, the two of us,
Okay.
Ben and I.
So that might be something you want to bring up there, is it, about how much flexibility but I'm assuming they're gonna bring this up at TCOT, but I just want to give you a heads up, because it was brought up at a meeting. And, yeah, it's kind of hard to explain, but we'll show you probably a little chart there, but I just want to give you a heads up on that. So I'm glad that we're gonna be doing that.
Is there any place we should be watching, following along with that, or is DCOG probably a better place?
TCOG, but I always ask them every time I'm hearing something from our planning department or other things that have directly to do with municipalities, I always ask, are you going to send it out? And maybe they are always going to do it anyway, but I always ask to make sure. So they're going to give you guys a heads up directly to the board, and so I keep reminding them to send it to the clerks, and the clerks to send it out to you guys. And also I told to send it to me when they send it to you, so that in case there's a discussion, and we'll talk about it, or I can say, hey, you know, we just see this email. So we'll just let you know. The amount that we put forward, this has to do with our budget for next year. The money that we're putting forward towards affordable housing. I don't know if you guys have heard about our community housing development fund. So I'm on that committee, and we evaluate different projects. Different developers come to us and ask for different size awards. It can be up to $300,000 towards affordable housing projects. For instance, at the last meeting a week or so ago, we approved $300,000 for Crescent Way. And so IHS comes to us, private developers come to us. We're also trying to encourage smaller developers to come to us, where one project I think is just 4 units. And we're trying to make it, so to make it more affordable, a lot of times it helps just to have a little bit of money. And also, if they're applying for grants through New York State affordable housing, us giving them a little bit of money says, hey, we approve that project. So just wanted to let you know, we're doubling, rather than 100,000 that we're putting in for our share, we're doubling it to 200,000, because we really see that that's a big issue as far as the whole county, because the prices, as you know, keep going up. And so it's harder and harder for people to be able to afford housing. We actually have more and more people at the homeless shelter who have full-time jobs, can't afford housing, which is kind of crazy. So that's a partnership with Cornell and the city of Ithaca, and they have each doubled how much they're putting into it too. And so over the past 10 years, we've put over $4 million towards affordable housing just from that little pot. Well, you know, that little pot grows and grows and grows. So let's see, AIM funding. So we got a little bit more information, and maybe you've had this information too. So that the state is going to has started in June giving the county sales tax from internet sales. And they've apparently already started taking out some of that money to save, to give to the municipalities for the AIM funding. We don't know how much extra that we're getting. They're not breaking it down for us. They might break it down at the end of the year, or like how much is the internet sales, so we know how much it's increased. And we don't know how much they're holding back for AIM funding. We have no idea. So some of the counties, including Tompkins County, some of us are not real thrilled with the state for just taking out some amount of money that we don't know how much they're taking out each month. And but overall, they're going to need to take out $387,000 that are have to hold back from the county's sales tax to pay for the AIM funding. So, in other words, they're not just taking out the county's sales tax, they're also taking municipalities' sales tax. So they're taking money from you, from the county, to give back to the AIM funding. So it's not the way that we'd like the state to operate, so we actually passed a resolution saying that we really object to that way of doing business, that we're taking of our sales tax without our permission, and we don't even know, like I said, we don't even know exactly how it's happening. And let's see, moving on to the census, we've been told that they are behind in their recruiting efforts for this county. So, you know, from folks, to the constituents, that they're still needing more people, and those jobs start at $17 an hour. When I had time, I would do that, 'cause it's more than what I get paid. Let's see, we passed a resolution, or I don't know if it's a resolution or like a law, that people that own one or two family homes and that make an improvement in it can now apply to our assessment department for 8-year graduated tax abatement on the improvement. So there's certain things that it's, basically is, if you were going to get your taxes raised because of that improvement, that's the type of thing you can apply for tax abatement. So for instance, if you do weatherization, that doesn't, you know, change your boiler out or whatever. So that's if you make an improvement between $5,000 and $80,000. And as people are getting building permits, that alerts the town or the village that somebody's making an improvement. That information goes to the county, I guess. So then we're gonna know, so we're gonna let the person know that they can apply for it. And so what the theory is behind that is that sometimes we've heard a lot that people won't make improvements to their houses or make them without a building permit because they're afraid to have their taxes go up. We're in the design stage of the shared fuel facility that's going to be shared between New York State Department of Transportation and the airport, and that's going to be up right next to the airport. So we approved that to be designed. We're going to have a public hearing about enacting a 5-cent paper bag fee. So if you guys have any input on that, I would take your input down if you want. And have you heard about that, or do you want to explain that? What's going to happen with that?
I mean, I think we're all familiar with the
Yeah,
idea,
I'm familiar.
Okay, so you have to opt in to do the 5-cent fee, and so we're going to opt in to do the 5-cent fee. I think about half of that, 2 or 3 cents, goes right to New York. State of New York, they keep that, and we get to keep a little bit of that. And what we're going to use that for, what we have to use it for, is to get education out there and also to actually provide reusable bags for people. And so we're going to have a public hearing on that, and we're looking towards probably passing that. And apparently only 3 counties in New York State are doing that, putting in a 5-cent fee. So that's not what New York State wanted, so they're gonna probably relook at that law this year, because they don't think most municipalities would enact that, because otherwise, a lot of people are just gonna switch to newspaper bags, which is not great. And so, our solid waste fee, as I think I mentioned at another meeting, we were proposing to increase that for up $2 from $58 to $60 for the yearly fee. And so we did pass that in the budget, so the solid waste fee is going to go up $2. And we passed last but not least, we passed our budget for next year, and there's an increase on the tax levy of 2.75%, with an average increase of $11.41 on a median priced home, $190. And I said that was it, when I looked at our sales tax. So coincidentally, we think sales tax was actually down for the first time in a long time. And so for the county, it was down for the month of September, down 2.83%. And for municipalities, that translated to a negative 9.32% from last September. And for the third quarter of the year, overall, the county was up 3%. For the year, so far, we're up 4.03%. Municipalities in the third quarter were down 0.28%. But overall, for the, in the third quarter, municipalities were still up 1.77%. I think that's it. And then run over to Ulysses. Any questions?
Any questions for Ann? Well, thank you much. There you go. Could have recorded it. Just hit replay.
Thank you.
No one needs to hear me, that's fine.
Okay, item number 10 we had removed. Item number 11 on the agenda is reports from board members, starting with fire, CPZR, and farmers market.
Sure. Pretty short update. Nothing to report on the fire front. Though actually, as I say that, nothing to report on the fire front. For CPZR, we have our regular meeting this Thursday at 6:30 in this room. We have our public meeting the week following, the 21st, Thursday the 21st, at 7 o'clock at the fire hall. So that's the first formal public meeting for this committee. Very much looking forward to it. We've been working closely with EDR on that, and we're going to be kind of just tightening up the last bits on Thursday. Hopefully, at this point, everyone has heard about it one way or another. We've had postcards sent out. Thanks to the front office staff for working on that. Coverage in all of the papers, I think, except for maybe the Free Press, which I'm hoping they'll do something this coming edition. Posting it up on Facebook and Nextdoor and kind of trying to cover all the bases. So hopefully we'll have a good turnout. Looking forward to getting feedback on our draft vision statement, understanding kind of where the process is, getting some feedback on what are important goals and activities we should be looking for inclusion in the plan going forward. And the market board, again, nothing much to report. As Roden mentioned, Evangeline was not able to make it today. She'll be here in December instead to kind of continue the conversation about rethinking the market manager position. I sent out an email. I did hear an update that Julia has said she will not be coming back next year. And I think that kind of underscores the tenuous circumstance that market manager position sits in. So we'll have some conversation about how that might be rethought and improved, hopefully. That's all I've got.
Okay. Next up, EMS Youth and Street Tree Advisory Committee.
So we had the pasta party. It was marvelous.
Very tasty.
Yeah, it was good. We had fun, good food, good music. We also presented Tom Major with an award and our thanks for 57 years of service. So that was, emotional, and it went really great. I thought it was nice to see him and Marie, and I like to think that he was moved by it. I hope he, I hope it was meaningful for him as much as it was for us. So also in Nancy's email, I hope that the town's adopted budget does include money for the year-round part-time rec director position. So that is moving forward. The search committee will be, starting to look at hopefully a massive flood of applications for that position very soon. So that'll be exciting. As far as the tree committee goes, we are sort of anxiously awaiting Guy's review of our tree law. So we'll see how that goes. Do you have any thoughts on timeline for that?
I was going to mention it later on. Basically, we will need, if we want to get it passed this year, assuming he gets it back to us, say this week,
right?
We would need to have a short special meeting sometime this month to introduce the law. We don't have to really do anything with it other than introduce it so that we can put it out publicly, and then we could have the public hearing at our December meeting, which will be close. It'll be tight, but it should be ability to get that grant application in by the end of the year.
So for context, I have sort of bullet pointed this rather hastily throughout the last several months, but just to do that again, the application for tree city status allows us a few points on an application for a grant that would help with inventorying and then maintaining the trees in the village, as well as planning and all of that. The grant, I think it would be over 3 years. It's actually 3 separate grants, but in order to get the second one, you have to have already had the first one. So it's, sequential. But in order to qualify even for the first one, we would basically need to do this. The grant was, we did apply and didn't get it. So this is sort of the piece that we're hoping to do that. In order to get tree city status, one of the pieces is that we have to have passed this law. So hopefully we can make that happen. It's a little bit, I'm not sure how Guy will, there may be some substantial edits coming out of this. I mean, this was written very much without a lawyer present. So we'll see. But if we can make that happen, it would be meaningful, certainly. And that actually brings me to one of the other things I wanted to bring up, which is that I'm hoping to talk with Dusty and also Deb soon. One of the things that the committee has been talking about is how do we encourage homeowners to take out trees that are dangerous. So there's a sort of line that we have to walk as far as, historically the village from time to time has offered new trees to replace old trees if people took down those trees. Our hope is that with this grant, that will start paying so that we'll be able to take a more sort of full service approach to that. So if there's dangerous trees, the village can take them out without any cost to the homeowner. But that's some ways down the road, right? That, like I said, it's a sequential grant. The first year is just planning and inventory. So it may be 2 to 3 years even after we get the grant. So in the meantime, there are trees that are dangerous. I'd like to put together some kind of package of what the village could offer to encourage that. Like the DPW helps frequently, but also sort of sporadically with things like that. So I'm hoping to come up with something that can be a little more systematic and fair. We also have, I think, about $5,000 to $6,000 worth of tree work in our sidewalk district, which I need to talk with Deb about when she gets back to see how we can fit that into our budget. But it will. It's fairly substantial. I have again been working with Dusty a little bit to try and get Asplund there, but all parties have been sort of hard to pin down. So we have removed 2 of the scariest trees. One of them kind of against everyone's will because it fell down. So there was no choice remaining. And that seems to be sort of what it takes to mobilize Asplund, which is a surprise to not many people, but it is, they have actually been quite willing, and I've been very surprised, and the crew that's been around has been pretty great. So hopefully that will continue to knock that $5,000 down a little bit. Dusty sort of knows that the next one's on the list, and so hopefully we can get them there. But that's about it, unless we would like to set that meeting. Do we do that now, or do you want to wait?
I think we'll need to
sort of
wait
skipped
to
ahead.
see what Guy comes back with. And then
Oh,
we can-
right.
we can pass that around, and if we need a special meeting, we can
Yeah,
set one.
we'll go for it. And then as far as EMS, there really isn't anything other than I think it's worth noting publicly that we have had renewed interest in that, in the manager position, which is really good news, I think, for everyone. So we'll see what comes of that. So that's all.
DPW water sewer, Deb Watkins is excused. Police and Trumansburg Chamber.
Excuse me. Starting with police, 213 calls for service during the month of October. 5 service calls outside the village, town of Ulysses, including assisting the New York State Police and Tompkins County Sheriff with a domestic non-criminal investigation and injured animal investigation. mainly the thing to highlight for our department is to offer thank yous and accolades to Chief and 3 of our officers, Mackenzie Covert, Ben Wright, and Brooke Owen, for really thorough participation in the school district's Red Ribbon Week, which is held during October across the nation to educate youth about staying drug-free. And they also used that month to talk about not only anti-drugs, but anti-bullying as well. You may have seen the bowl out front, which created widespread speculation in the community as to why it was out there. That's why. And it received really good reviews from the school district, who was very thankful for the police department's involvement. So I walking the kids to school a couple times. I saw them out early handing out pencils and stuff to kids as they were walking in. So again, I think I want to say thank you to Chief and our department for really making good on that promise to be more thoroughly involved in the community. They've done a great job with that and being visible, and also continuing to provide great information through their Facebook page that gets a tremendous amount of engagement. I know because I also get all the alerts. So keep them coming.
Do you know
What's that?
do you know if the vote for that is still available? The vote for the photo that they did?
Oh, yeah, I think it is. Yeah, yeah.
So speaking of that Facebook page, people should go there.
Yeah, go to the Facebook page and vote for our photo. Yes, thank you for that reminder. Chamber of Commerce, we have a meeting tomorrow where we'll get more updated information. Coming up, we have the 100th anniversary dinner for the Chamber on November 22nd. And as usual, we'll be doing our person, business, and organization of the year. So if looking for a ticket to that, I believe they're available. That will be at the conservatory again. Winterfest, just as a reminder, is on 12/7, 3 to 6. We have a relatively new business in Sweet Melissa's, a new hair salon. And we might want to talk to some people and see if we have a record for hair salons per capita. I think we have 4 places you can get your hair done now on Main Street, which is pretty good.
Variety's important.
There's a lot of options there. So get out there and give your hair to the village. Opportunity. We're also reviewing a new logo for our Chamber of Commerce. We'll talk about that at the meeting tomorrow. There's been a couple of renderings sent around, so trying to rebrand the chamber. And 2 weekends ago, we, Mayor Hart, and I think Ben, you were there too, recognized TCNS officially at their 60th anniversary birthday party. They were presented the Chief Ferretti Award, which made some local news in the Tompkins Weekly. And I think that's it.
Okay. Treasurer.
That about the trees. It
Oh,
might an idea, and I can check with them, they, to replace the trees, I mean, we probably said $1 not much. We might be able to be reimbursed for that through our beautification grant.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Because they generally do that kind of stuff, okay? The auditors were here last week, and it went amazingly smoothly. They were only here 4 days, so that was good. Our report will probably be ready. Dwayne will usually present it in February. I talked to the accountants, and they didn't seem to find anything that was, crazy. So, that was good. I mean, it worked out well. Morgan got a little dirty on that one because she had to do some things, but it was cool. It worked. The other thing I had was, I have a resolution,
our contract we're need to sign with your permission it's a 3-year contract for our stretchers and our stair chair. And also there's a resolution in the Dropbox for said contract to pay that. In the amount of, it's 2,600 and change, that was it?
I thought it was more than that.
Oh, 5,900, sorry. Hold on.
What is it exactly?
What is what?
5,900 even?
59.10 and 90 cents.
Do you want separate resolutions?
Yes, because one is
Oh,
for
permissive
allowance from
revenue.
him to sign.
Yeah, so I move that we authorize Roy to sign the striker contract.
Second.
And this is, you know,
This is
it's budgeted and sort of, you know, we've done it.
yeah, this is essentially a service contract, includes parts, labor, travel, inspection, unscheduled service, product equipment checklists, and replacement parts, other than basically batteries. On the 2 power, they call them power cots, so power stretchers, and the 2 stair chairs. The contract covers the next 3 years. So we have a motion to authorize me to sign this. Any additional comments or conversation? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions.
And the resolution is to take that $5,910.90 from the EMS maintenance contract reserve.
So I move that we approve $5,910.90 from the EMS maintenance contract reserve to pay for this striker contract subject.
Motion and a second. Or do we have a second?
Second.
Now we have a second. Any additional discussion? If not, then all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions.
I don't believe I'm gonna work on the 9/6 thing, because the rest of November and December are pretty slow. So I'm gonna try and get the whole
Oh, great,
9/6 thing up by the end of the year.
Great.
Okay?
Yep.
If there's anything else, let me know.
Okay.
I don't believe there's anything else that's happening.
Okay. Our senior clerk is excused unless there's anything that our junior clerk, our deputy clerk has to report on her behalf.
We sent out water bills on the first.
And remember, you can pay online. Tammy loves it.
Yes,
If she were here, she'd want me to say,
definitely. we can
use
do
the
that.
online portal.
Absolutely.
We definitely have a routine that goes on, so it works out.
For my report, I have 3 items to go over very briefly. The first one is the Health Consortium is undergoing or will be undergoing a review of the Municipal Cooperative Agreement, or the MCA, which formed the consortium. Part of the requirements of the MCA is that every 5 years it gets a thorough review. It was initially passed in 2010 to allow for the consortium to start January 1 of 2011. The last review was done in 2015, and 2020 is our next review. So the consortium is requesting of any municipality that would like to see a change of some type. Could be anything. Could be in the structure of the consortium. Could be in the way that the MCA is written. It could be any of those things. And there's kind of there's a time period between now, basically, and the end of the year is when we want to get that feedback if there are municipalities who have a concern or want to see something changed. If any municipality, such as I think the village, is happy with the way things are set up and structured, then we can simply move to state that we have no objection to the continuance of the structure of the organization as it currently stands. And there's a form letter that I would send back. So I wanted to see if there are any questions about the consortium. Can get complicated quickly, but if there's any kind of broad brush questions about it, or if there's anything that you think that the consortium could be or should be doing organizationally that either you don't know that it is or you know that it isn't, then now would be a time to broach that. I think our December, I wanted to discuss it tonight because our December meeting won't really give us much time to submit the feedback that we're requesting.
So I don't know much about the consortium at all, except that it works, and that sort of suffices for me.
Okay.
But the one thing that you have brought up that I'm a little curious about is the balance that was increasing and getting to the point that maybe red flags would be raised somewhere. And I'm curious if there's a resolution to that,
Sure.
like what it is. I mean,
Well, I have some numbers I'll give you right now, just kind of broad overview numbers, and I can certainly send them by email if you'd like. In September, we accepted the application for admission to the consortium of 4 additional. We've been doing several a year, but we accepted 4 more in September. The villages of Watkins Glen, the town of Horseheads, the town of Spencer, and then the employee of the Lansing Community Library. The libraries actually are admissible, interestingly enough. That brings us up to 43 participating municipalities in the consortium. Our budget, our adopted budget for 2020 will be, I'll give you a wrong number. It'll be approximately $55 million for the consortium. Every year for the last several years, the consortium has projected to use a little bit of the unencumbered balance of the consortium in order to keep rate increases around 5%. The healthcare, the trend in healthcare cost increase is around between 7 and 8%. So the idea is we'll raise premium 5%. We'll need a little bit more than that, so we'll use some fund balance. However, every year we end up coming in under budget. This year we're projected to be another $1 million and change under budget. So the balance is, as of the end of 2019, is looking to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $16.5 to $17 million of unencumbered fund balance. There are 4 reserve accounts totaling close to $14 million. 2 of those are statutory. One is something called an IBNR, an incurred but not reported claims reserve. Basically, if the Department of Financial Services says that if the consortium were to shut its doors on day X, there will be medical claims that have been incurred but haven't been paid yet. So there needs to be enough money in a reserve account to pay that run out. And that's a guess. They have a percentage that they need us to maintain. The law says it has to be 25% of your annual claim dollars. We've negotiated it down to 12%. Our number probably should be more like 7%, but they won't let us go below 12. There's also a statutory surplus account, which never gets really used. It's just part of the law. And the consortium has established a rate stabilization reserve, which we pegged at 5% of our annual medical claims number, in case we see a shock to the system somewhere and don't want to raise premiums by more than a certain percentage. And then we've also established a catastrophic claims reserve for the very high cost, the $1 million claim. So we can have some money set aside to pay those claims. Once you allocate for those reserves, we have 16.5 to 17 million of unencumbered balance. The short answer, that's the long answer. The short answer is there isn't any resolution yet. There are municipalities who are beginning to say we should be using that money as fast as we can to keep our premiums down. I have been advocating on the consortium board that we should be using that money to increase the size of some of these reserves, with the notion that we're not going to run under budget every year forever. And so if we like a stable 4 to 5% a year increase, we don't want to have a shock of a 10 or 11% increase. We need to really beef up the reserves, and that's still an ongoing debate. As far as how much is too much, in theory, the comptroller could come in and say, you have too much reserves because you're all municipalities and we don't like municipalities to have too much. The problem is the comptroller doesn't regulate the consortium, the Department of Financial Services does. They view the consortium as an insurance company. And there is no such thing as an insurance company with too much reserves in the eyes of the DFS. So we'll wait until someone says something.
Is it, I mean, given our discussions lately, or is it being invested? Is it just sitting, or what is?
It is. It's being invested with a third-party money manager who invests in government treasuries, and they're getting close to 2% of the money. So the revenue is going to be somewhere around $500,000 or $600,000 this year on the invested dollar. There is, and this is out of the weeds a little bit, but I have introduced the concept of building the reserves and the unencumbered balance to a size large enough.
Start a trust of some kind.
Well, at the earnings, in theory, if interest rates ever go up, the earnings can become meaningful enough to actually factor into operations. You know, it's a $55 million organization, so it would have to be a big number. I don't think there's necessarily the willingness, particularly as we get smaller municipalities joining, and they wrestle with a tax cap, and $10,000 or $15,000 makes a big difference. They might like to see that come back to them in the form of a lack of premium increase. But from a long-term perspective, I look at it as 15, 20, 25 years out. If health insurance is going to continue to go up a few percent a year, that's manageable. If we have a few percent a year and then a 12% a year, that starts to really skew things in the wrong way, which is what we had before. We were all buying our insurance. But the question as far as the MCA for next year is, if there's anything that this board would like to request in terms of a change to the structure, this would be the chance. Whatever, I think there will be some requests from some quarters. Whatever the MCA looks like after it's revised and redrafted in 2020, that will come back to this board to be readopted in order to maintain the consortium structure. If all the municipalities don't readopt it, the consortium essentially ceases to exist. So we need to make sure that
It has to be unanimous.
No.
Don't just drop it.
It doesn't have to be unanimous, but it does have to be, technically, it's not a unanimous adoption, it's a signing on to the agreement. It's a municipal cooperative agreement. Here's what the structure looks like, and yes, we will continue to participate. So a municipality could drop off if they wanted to. It's not a vote per se, it's more of a agreement to continue to participate. I don't anticipate any problems, but now's the time to put in our 2 cents if we want to change something.
Can we use legally take that money and provide an ambulance fund for places that might not have ambulance coverage? Is that considered health?
Interesting. I haven't gone down that road, but I don't know that there's a mechanism to do that. But it is leading to more. We are having more discussions, elsewhere about where does financing come from. I don't know that money specifically can help, but it's not a bad question.
Are you to sort of go back to the unencumbered fund balance, which just seems like far too much money to have invested in treasuries? Are you limited in the same way as we are? You can't. That's your sort of hamstring there.
Yeah, I think it's 5G of general municipal law doesn't allow government-based entities to invest outside it. So since all the participants are municipalities,
Then it still counts,
that's the limiting factor.
except the library. Do we get some kind of out because there's a library?
So the one employee can invest something differently. So if you think of anything in the next week or so that you'd like to float to the consortium in terms of structure change, you certainly let me know. Otherwise, I'll just indicate that we don't have any particular gripe or item.
Could you forward the agreement just for, I don't know.
The review letter or the full MCA?
Yes,
Both?
both. I mean, I'm not promising to get through it, but I'm curious just to.
And you kind of mentioned the slide deck there. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it looks
Okay.
interesting. Or any sort of other high-level overview.
With pictures, preferably. Anything with pictures.
It has nice graphs.
Nice graphs. There was people saw there's a slide deck from WeWork recently that went around that had some pretty fantastic graphs in it. Yeah. Keep getting far afield now.
I will forward that along. The next item is just a reminder. It's been publicized this Saturday at, I believe, 2 p.m. We will be having a ceremony in front of what was the McClellan House Bed and Breakfast. It is now a private residence, commemorating or the unveiling rather of an historical marker to commemorate that property as the birthplace of Herman Biggs. The Biggs family and the Camp families have a very long and intertwined family tree. Herman Biggs was born in that house and went on to be, and I won't scoop all of the discussion from Saturday's festivities, but he went on to become a doctor of world renown, and we're going to celebrate his birthplace here in his hometown of Trumansburg.
Is that the corner of Bradley and McClellan?
Yes,
That tree is gone?
yes.
I just want to point out that the tree committee facilitated this whole thing.
I want to thank Sandy List and David Wren for doing a tremendous amount of work researching. David Wren, formerly of the Halsey House B&B,
Okay, of course.
did a tremendous amount of work researching Herman Biggs, working with the Pomeroy Foundation, which gives the grant funding for these historical markers here in New York State. It's fascinating stuff.
What time was that on Saturday?
2 p.m. And then the third item is wanted to have at least start a discussion. Ben had mentioned the possibility, I know in the past we've looked at it, although not in great detail, whether it's worth considering having a crossing guard, which would have to be a police department employee, although not necessarily a police officer, having a crossing guard at the intersections of South and Wig Street in the morning and afternoon to help manage student pedestrian traffic. If it's something we want to have Chief look into further in terms of, is it necessary, is it required, is there enough foot traffic, foot and vehicle traffic? If the consensus becomes that it would be a good idea, but how do we pay for it? Then I think the next step would be to talk to the school and see if they would be willing to help contribute to the cost. The third and probably most difficult piece would be finding someone to do it. And so that's the conversation I would throw open now, is whether it's something we want to look into or not.
I'll say I've been looking at that corner quite a bit over the past few months. I've had a couple of residents bring it up as a particularly tricky corner, especially in the mornings. There is, I mean, just anecdotally, it seems like there's a lot of traffic that comes through there, a lot of foot traffic, a lot of car traffic, even a moderate amount of bike traffic, rarely with helmets, which frightens me. Not that this would particularly help that specific instance, but just there's a lot that goes on in the mornings, especially coming through there. I've looked at it a couple different ways of, increased signage or crossing guard, a couple different options. I feel like the crossing guard might be the best kind of patch for the approach. Stop signs had also been brought up at one point, but that seems rather heavy-handed, and as does some sort of like lit up, lighted crossings apparatus there seems a little over the top. I think a crossing guard kind of really fits the bill, so I'm interested in pursuing it further. I would like, and I've talked with Chief about this, I'd love to see more information about car throughput and pedestrian throughput. I know Officer Wright has some car data I was hoping to have for this conversation, but I think he's still compiling that. But yeah, I'm definitely interested in starting that conversation and kind of seeing where it takes us.
I think you mentioned, or maybe it was Keith mentioned the idea last meeting of having a police officer go and be a crossing guard for a couple of days just to see what it looks like. I mean, that would be, I think, the best way to approach it. I am not there anymore. It's been a few years since I walked to school, and when I was doing it, no one was driving, so it was a different time. I think it seems to me, at least, like there's a lot more cars going to school. It's a lot more of a heavy traffic area now than in my memory, certainly. So I just don't know. I have no idea. Without someone there to see it and really pay attention, it's hard to say.
I certainly see the cars coming down Wig. I don't know how much pedestrian crossing there is, but it definitely seems worth a study at the very least, based on that many cars.
Yeah, so why don't we see if Ben has that information for us for December. I'll reach out just to let her know what we're doing. I'll reach out to Kimberly Bell and let her know that we're looking at it, see if she has an opinion. See if any of see if anyone from the school bus side of their infrastructure has an opinion. Float the idea that if we do go in that direction, whether there would be any cost sharing. Reconvene on it in December.
Okay.
Item number 12, old business. We already discussed the street tree law update. We're waiting for attorney review, and then we will find a time to introduce that if we can to get that passed in 2019. New business, item number 13. In the Dropbox is a draft law. When getting some information from Tompkins County Assessment on the local law that we passed earlier, in that section of the real property tax law, it was brought to my attention by a resident, actually, that we do offer a partial exemption for veterans, but that there are other veterans exemptions that the village does not offer. The one that the village does offer is kind of the standard one that we're aware of. There's a certain amount of exemption for service from certain dates to certain dates, basically from Gulf War to present. If you served in any branch of the military from 1991 to present, with or without combat, you get a certain amount of exemption. If you served in combat, you get a larger number.
I didn't realize it was limited.
Yeah.
I was confused when I saw this one.
And then if you served in combat, then that is another number. And then if you've been injured in combat, there's another number. There's something that was passed several years ago that I wasn't aware of, which also grants a similar graduated exemption up to certain limits for anyone serving during the period essentially from, I think it's December 1945 until December 1991 or 1990 or 1989, somewhere in that range, 45 to 89. I'd have to look up the law. What we generally think of as the Cold War era. And so I'm interested in seeing if this board is interested in adopting this provision the draft local law, which we would have to introduce and consider in December, but it basically says that we would accept the property tax exemptions as provided in section 458B, which allows for certain qualifying residential properties, it has to be your primary residence, to receive a partial exemption from taxation as defined by the law and as administered by the county assessment department. The limits are 10% of the property's assessment not to exceed $8,000, multiplied by some equalization rate that New York State dreams up. That number goes up if the individual has any type of disability rating, military disability rating, due to their service during that time. That number would go up to 1/2. Essentially half of the assessment not to exceed $40,000. So we're basically looking at a cap of $8,000 of reduced assessment value. So if your house is assessed at $200,000, but you served in the Cold War as defined by this law, it will be taxed on $192,000 value instead of the 200. If you have a disability connected to that service, then your $200,000 assessment will be taxed at $160,000 rate. I think personally, with Veterans Day being yesterday, I tend to lean heavily in favor of looking for these ways to honor the service of people who have served in the military. And we do on the one law. So I wanted to see what the feeling of the board was on considering this one.
I'm absolutely.
Are there any other municipalities in county or nearby that also have this to this level? I'm just curious. That doesn't really change my mind. I'm just curious.
So-
Why is it not just a veteran exemption? Like why did this? That baffles me. I knew we had the one. I didn't realize it was limited though.
Under school.
The school is just a veterans exemption.
So there's several different sections. There's a veterans exemption that we're both more familiar with. Then there's this one is newer, a Cold War veterans exemption. And the town of Danby, the town of Groton, the town of Lansing have opted into it. It looks like every municipality in Tompkins County has opted into the other one that we're familiar with, which has been around for longer as far as I can tell. Of course, we just dealt with 467J, which is for housing trusts specifically. There are some exemptions I've never heard of before. There's section 469, which gives some type of exemption for living quarters provided for grandparents. Certain business exemptions, which the village apparently has opted into for some time, which allows
What are
for
you looking at right now?
something that Jay Franklin from County Assessment sent me.
Mm-hmm.
Local exemption options in Tompkins County. The business, every municipality in the county has opted into, actually with the exception of, who is that? Village of Cuba Heights. Basically, if you build out an improvement on your commercial space, then 50% of the value of the improvement will be phased in over, I think it's 10 years, rather than having it all hit at once.
So isn't it kind of like what Ann was talking about? with
Yeah, but the commercial.
person- Right, with personal
Yeah.
activities.
Of course, we know about certain exemptions for adding solar and wind energy systems. Those are phased in over time unless the municipality opts out. So there are a couple other subsets of this, but the two big veterans exemptions are the one we already have. And this one for Cold War. 458A, I can actually pull it up just because it's a curious question.
So while you're looking that up, I'll just say my little philosophical piece,
Sure.
just to get it out there in public. For what it's worth, I think our country as a whole does an abysmal job supporting our armed forces when they come home. I think we go to war without a care in the world as to how we're going to deal with those repercussions. I think it's an embarrassment to anyone who pays attention, and I am personally strongly against war. Have pretty marginal views about the armed forces and people who go that route. But I think as a country, it's morally incumbent on all of us to handle the repercussions of our decisions. And this is such a glaring, it's, I don't know, it's embarrassing. You know, yesterday was Veterans Day, to read about the horrific stories of veterans coming home and then not having the support of the country that sent them is horrible. So any tiny piece of that, I think there's no way to not do that in my mind. Even as a municipality who had no part of the decision to go to war in the first place, but nonetheless, it's incumbent on all of us, I think.
Is there any estimation how many residents this would impact?
It would be marginal. I mean, it's only $8,000, even if we had 10 of them, it's not affecting. But, you know, I mean, that's.
Just for clarification, the veterans exemption the village has opted into a long time ago, section 458A, is for veterans of the armed forces who served during a period of war as defined by Spanish-American War. I don't know if anyone's still around from that.
It's
World
about
War,
all veterans. I think we should include.
World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam War, and then from the Persian Gulf conflict until present. So they exempted the non-specific Cold War period that did not involve actual service in either the Korean or Vietnam theater until this next
But
law.
still included actual combat. I mean, that's
Correct.
That's very.
Any other thoughts, comments?
Would love to pursue it.
Yeah, same.
Then, if there isn't any objection, I would like to formally introduce the draft local law in the Dropbox as proposed local law number 5, 2019.
So moved.
Actually, I don't think we need a resolution to
Oh,
introduce
right.
it, but we do need to set a public hearing date, which I would suggest our December 9th regular monthly meeting. Seems as good a time as any.
Sounds good.
That's good with everyone. So we'll get that notice published appropriately for December 9th. Great. Okay, any other new business? Anything else we want to, since we are 8:20, an hour and 10 minutes ahead of schedule.
You're not allowed to say that. by the way.
Let's
You
get
just-
those abstracts going.
All right. Then item number 14 on the agenda is approval of abstracts.
I have a question for you, son.
Oh, I didn't see them.
You had asked what the Lewis Those are all police.
Oh, yeah, I was just curious about
They're all police
they're
uniforms.
very pricey. So I
Well,
guess
he ordered
police
them.
is the,
He ordered them all shirts within the city.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense then.
Okay.
Actually, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yo, Wednesday, yes, we do. There you go.
So we have a general fund abstract in the amount of $149,014.17. I noticed that number is down quite a bit from last month, which
November and
means
December.
you should go on vacation.
I move that we approve that abstract, by the way.
Then
I thought you meant to
we give the treasurer.
approve her
we give the
vacation.
raise.
It's not, look, cut off her nose to spite
I
her face.
know. No, November and December generally is much lower than the other 10 months.
I mean, everything's lower. EMS billing's lower. Everything's.
EMS billing. Yeah. Sorry, we do more sick people.
I second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion on the general fund abstract? If not, then all in favor of paying it, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. EMS billing abstract, $21,369.51.
Move that we approve that EMS billing.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Any abstentions? We have a water fund abstract in the amount of $17,181.08.
I move that we approve this abstract.
Second.
All in favor of paying the water fund abstract, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. We have a sewer fund abstract in the amount of $20,016.34.
I move that we approve this abstract.
Second.
There's no questions then. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. And last but not least is the trust and agency abstract totaling $38,154.22.
Move that we approve that trust and agency.
Second.
All in favor then, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay. It's done.
Was that
Item
the
number
first abstract without the sewer project? Water?
Is it because we're going out the sewer project?
It's the second.
Second one? All right,
Yeah,
wasn't paying attention.
We had one in July, I think was the last time the sewer project was, or that was a water project.
Just seemed like,
It's been well over a year since we had.
Sewer we haven't had in a while.
oh, sorry.
Water,
Yeah, I must have meant the water.
It was
water
in
might have
July.
been
Really?
July or August. Yeah.
Yeah. Like $1,200.
There was also like 5 was done, and then it was done.
Right,
And then
yeah.
it was done.
No, I don't know why it popped out of me this time that it wasn't there, but
It fell short.
it did. It felt, it's because it was smaller and there's less happening. All right, sorry. Getting us off track.
Item number 15 is our second public comment period, but seeing no members of the public present, we will move on to item number 16. I would entertain a motion to go back into executive session for a brief discussion of EMS personnel.
So
Second.
All in favor?
Getting there.